would like to thank you for joining us on behalf of Freska and Express Publishing. So, we've all been through a bit of a very wonderful and weird year, I think, since February 2020, and it doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. So what I would like us to discuss in this particular session is all the things that we've had to go through as teachers, having to transfer from teaching in the physical classroom to teaching in the online classroom. So the title of the presentation today is called the place of the old in the brave new world. Now, of course, when we say old, we are not referring to us as teachers, just all older traditional ways of teaching in this brave new world of technology. So let's have a little look about the things that we're going to do, or we have been doing for the last year or so. I am not inventing the wheel in any way, okay? I just hope that maybe I can give you some inspiration through some of these ideas that we've come across. These are from my own personal experience of teaching online, through also my colleagues and teachers who I've been coming across over the last year through webinars. Okay, I'm just gonna turn off my camera, so I don't want to be distracting you. Okay, so let's have a look now. So first of all, in February or March 2020, this coronavirus hit the world and it became a part of our life. Whether we like it or not, it is a reality. So this is where it comes to how we see, how we view it as teachers. If we're going to view it as a problem, or if you want to be a little bit more optimistic, and this can actually be an opportunity for us to do something different, to try something different. Now, when we're thinking about our online teaching, we're going to do a SWOT. So I want us to look a little bit at the strengths, at the weaknesses, at the opportunities that can come from this, and of course the threats. So let's have a look at the strengths together. Now, flexibility in schedules and number of students. The fact is that I know from sometimes when I've had seminars in Serbia, sometimes teachers told me that they'd have to split the classrooms into two because of the large number of students. Whereas actually, now that you don't have the physical restraints of having a physical classroom, you can actually have the lesson in one go instead of having it split into two different classes. Presents different opportunities for collaboration and creativity for our digital natives. Now, I'm not telling you something new. Our students of 2021 love to use technology. They like to use YouTube and video cameras and different ways that are tech friendly. So actually, now that they're all at home, we're able to collaborate and be creative in a more tech friendly, digital native kind of way. Audio-visual components can be effectively combined. Again, so they can use different audio-visual components in order to do activities or projects that are communicative and creative. Now, synchronous learning. We all know what it is. Synchronous learning is when both the learner and the teacher are present at the same time when the learning or the teaching is going on. Now, but synchronous learning is actually not limited to a physical classroom. It's actually just as good for us. Synchronous learning can take just as well place in the interactive classroom as well, in the online classroom as well. However, this way of teaching actually allows for asynchronous learning to actually take place as well. And now, why does that happen? Because the teacher might choose to actually record a video and then send it on to the teachers, or allows for some of the learning to take place off camera when the students are on their own. Now, the reason this is really good, because it actually allows students to learn at their own space and pace. And of course, online teaching actually can allow for better classroom management. So you're never going to have the excuse of students not being on time. Hopefully, it allows us to take more control of the applications that are used in the classroom or the condition that the learning is taking place under. Now, let's have a look at some of the weaknesses. Feel free, of course, to give me some ideas of things that you've had to come across from in the actual online learning classroom. I actually do have access to the chat box here. I don't actually speak Serbian, unfortunately, so if you do want to say anything to me during the presentation, feel free to do so. Just please do so in English. My Serbian's a little bit rusty at this time. Okay, so let's have a look here at some of the weaknesses. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to close the box. Okay, so it needs self-discipline from students. I'm not telling you something you haven't come across in all of your online lessons. Telling students, no, I don't want to have a look at your pet. No, please, you have to wear clothes and not pajamas. Yes, you have to be on time. Please make sure you've got the TV turned off or the radio turned off, or your bedroom door is shut so I don't hear your mom cooking in the kitchen, for instance, okay? Technology can be frustrating. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but, all right, 1 second. All right, I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but the fact is that technology can be frustrating. Everything can work, whereas actually, until the moment you have to go online into your classroom and everything goes wrong. The connection goes off, nothing's working, the platform isn't working. Okay, so good internet connection is also necessary. Of course, we have to be able to connect to our students online. Equipment is necessary. Now, I'm not saying we're going to go and buy extravagant, expensive equipment, but certain equipment is necessary. So we have to use a laptop or a computer or even a mobile if we're not going to be sharing our screen. Teachers do have to be tech savvy. So we do have to have some knowledge of how to use technology. I'm not going to lie to you, I am not tech savvy. And when I started doing my online teaching, I had to have a lot of help, from friends who were tech savvy. The fact is that one of the saddest parts for me personally is that there's no face-to-face interaction with students. And that's a shame. But the fact is that we use certain video conferencing platforms which enable us to view our students through the camera. At least it gives us some sense of this. Autonomy in learning can generate gaps for both students and teachers. So the fact is, because we're not in the physical classroom, we will of course do our best to fill these gaps as much as we can. But because there's a lot of autonomous learning going on with our students, sometimes there may be gaps created in the actual learning process. You might need to use more than one platform for your needs. So again, this can be quite frustrating. We have to use different platforms if it's going to be through an LMS and then a video conferencing platform, or a different platform or students have to have various different platforms for learning, which can be quite frustrating for them sometimes. And of course, for me, one of the most frustrating parts is assessing students through tests, which might be complicated. Now, I don't know about you guys. Personally, when the students have had to do tests, because you want to make sure that they're not teaching, they're not using Google, or they're not using, help of a friend, what I tend to do is quite often is I ask them to have the paper if they're printing it, or I want them to have the camera onto the keyboard if they're doing it online, which means that I can see both their hands, and I ask them to unmute the mute button so I can hear if someone else is helping them. I don't know if any of you, ladies and gentlemen, have any better ideas for how you deal with assessing students online. If you have any ideas, please feel free to contact us in the chat box. Hello to everybody. I can see here hello from Belgrade, hello from snowy places in Serbia. I'm very jealous. We actually currently have 22 degrees here in Greece, but I assure you I would much prefer to have a little bit of snow. The English inside of me does miss the snow. Okay, now next, opportunities. The fact is that for a lot of teachers, less teaching time creates opportunities for more classes. So even if you're doing private lessons on the side, or if you're able to do more classes for your school, it can actually create the opportunity for this. However, on the other hand, some teachers might tell me that actually, Kristi, because I'm having to spend a lot more time to prepare for my classes that take place online, I don't have more time for this. That's absolutely acceptable, and I understand that completely. Now, for some teachers, if you choose to, we can have a gamified experience for the students. So you can either do that through a variety of different LMS platforms, or you can try to gamify the experience for your students yourself. So gamification is essential when we bring game mechanic elements to our teaching. So you can say to your students, for those who do well in these particular activities, you can finish 10 minutes early in the next lesson, or you can have, I don't know, some chocolate. It's a little bit different, of course, now that it's not a physical lesson, but you can post the chocolate, or you can owe it to them when you come back to the classroom, or they can have 20 minutes extra in the next test. Now, potential for development of new services. Now, because we're actually not in the physical classroom, which means that we can now introduce different applications into our lessons that we weren't able to do before. Sometimes, for some classrooms, you might not have had computers or interactive whiteboard softwares, which you can now use since you're in the comfort of your own home. Now, resistance from students or parents can be a threat when transferring to online teaching. I don't know if you've had that. I'm sure you've had that at some point since last February. I know I have, and I know the language school that I worked with also has that, or colleagues of mine who are teachers have been telling me that parents were very resistant when changing from physical lessons to online lessons. They don't think that it's as powerful, or the learning is as efficient or as effective for that matter. And sometimes there is insufficient guidance when it comes. It can either be from our school, not in a malicious way. They might not have been able to help us as much as we would have liked to, or insufficient guidance when it comes to actually using these technical elements. And of course, then we have the delivery of lesson, which might not be as effective, or we might feel that it is not actually as effective. Okay, and the fact is that e-learning can be more costly than expected as well. Why? Because if we don't have a laptop or a computer in the classroom, then we might actually have to purchase some of these to use at home, which will then, of course, introduce some extra costs into the learning process. Okay, let's have a look. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there's three different types of teachers or human beings had to transfer to online teaching in 2020. And let's have a look at these three options. Those who had already been using it can now become mentors for the rest of the teaching community. So those who were already comfortable with technology, you were able to help others. Those who didn't use it at all, but dived into deep water and realized that it's actually okay and it's manageable. And of course, we have the third category of those who didn't use it and are still reluctant or skeptical. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, for a little while now, and it's going to be for a few months to go, I think, unfortunately, technology is going to be a big part of our teaching method. So we kind of have to get on with it, essentially. Now, just to show the significance of online teaching since last February 2020, I have here some different stats from LMS platforms across the globe. Now, for this particular LMS platform, you see that in the blue section of the pie chart were actually online registrations since August 2017 all the way up to February 2020, the beginning of February. So 46%, but actually 29% and 25% of the registrations happened since March 2020 all the way up to October 2020. So you actually have 54% that took part in 6 months, and 46% that went across through three separate years. You see here the logins that are spiking around about February 2020 when the situation first started, coronavirus began, and of course online teaching took place. So how do I do it? How do we do it? Well, first of all, something I've heard from a lot of teachers in the past year was that, I'm not able to teach in the way that I'm used to. But actually, the fact is that skills that we use in the classroom are actually completely transferable skills to doing physical classroom to actually doing an online classroom. So let's have a look here. So to generate creativity, this is something you do on a day-to-day basis in your physical classroom, and it's exactly the same when it comes to an online teaching. We can still generate the same creativity. We can still use the same activities. And as a matter of fact, we probably use even more creative ideas now that we're online, as students can use a variety of different applications as well, if you choose to do so. You still have student-centered lessons, whether it's asynchronous or whether it's synchronous. It's still all about the learning experience. So student-centered means that there's going to be a lot more student talking time. You can still do that in your classroom. That's not a problem at all. Being resourceful, you can still do that. It just means that you've adapted to this new way of producing the lesson. So you can be resourceful in finding different platforms or applications that will work for your students. For example, an application that was brought to mind was Flipgrid. So Flipgrid is an application that you can use where you give an idea, able to create videos as a form of communicative activities. My apologies, I'm not quite sure exactly what happened there. Talk about when technology goes wrong. Okay, so let's get back to it. So again, you see, brings me to my point. Everything can be perfectly practiced, and of course, the moment you need it, it will go wrong. Okay, so again, being resourceful. For example, if this had happened to me a year ago, I would be panicking and being very worried. But now you kind of get used to it. This happens when you're using technology. So let's go to the next step. Being well prepared. So being both physically and emotionally prepared that these things will happen. But jokes aside, being well prepared for the content, being able to use the right platform that will allow, for example, for your class to be student-centered. For instance, I'm going to show you later on. I know in Zoom, for those of you who like to use Zoom, it allows for breakout rooms. So what that means is you can do an activity, and then when you want to have some group work or pair work, you can prepare to have breakout rooms, which are digital classrooms where each of these students will be paired or grouped together. So you still make sure you have plenty of communicative activities going on, or you have enough audio material or the interactive material ready at hand to show and to present to your students. Now, another thing, talking about transferable skills, being a good communicator and facilitator. Now, for those of you, you've been teachers for many years, in order to be a good teacher, you're already good communicators. You are already good facilitators. So that doesn't have to change just because your classroom is now through a screen. You're still fantastic at communicating, putting the point across. You're still great at being good facilitators. Okay, now the technical part of it. What do we need in order to have an online classroom? Now, for those of you who want to, most teachers actually, when you're at home, you want to share your screen. You want to be able to share the content of your screen with your students. You might want to have a PowerPoint presentation. You might want to share a video or some audio. Now, in order to do this, you will need a laptop or a tablet or a computer, or if you don't want to share a screen, you just want to be in your student's camera, it will have to be a phone. I mentioned before, internet connection is also very crucial when it comes to actually doing a lesson. Now, if you want to, you can choose not to. You can just use your 4 or 5G, and within a lesson, all your megabytes will be gone. Now, I do suggest, of course, you will have to use some kind of video conferencing software. To be quite honest with you, there are many, many, many different types of video conferencing softwares available online. As I mentioned before, I'm much more confident by using Zoom, just because I've been using it for the last year. It took me a while to get used to it. Just like you guys, you know, I also had to get used to using online and getting used to, oh my God, I'm playing this video, but my students can't hear the audio. Oh my God, the presentation is frozen, or all these things that we've had to get used to. And both as a teacher, but also as a teacher trainer and a presenter, I also had to get used to doing webinars as opposed to seminars. And I'm not going to lie to you, I much prefer physical seminars because I get to see you, ladies and gents, I get to see your reaction, I get to feed off your energy, just like you do with your students in the classroom. So, speakers, headphones, and earphones. Now, I've just put these here for the sake of it. To be really honest with you, I don't have headphones or earphones in right now. And when I have video conferences, I hear just fine. However, if you have students who are in a quite noisy environment, so if they're at home, if their mother or their father is at home, or there's any work going on in the house, I would suggest that they would have to get some, of course. You can use a microphone to make sure that students can hear you well. And the camera, again, it's not necessary if you're using a laptop or a tablet or a computer or a phone with a camera that's embedded in it. You don't, of course, need to have any extra cost. We don't have money to spend for the sake of it, do we? No. Okay, now let's have a look. Let me just put that over there. Okay, so the content. It's important that we have content that can be transferable to the students and that can be seen and viewed by the students as well. Now, you can use an LMS software or a learning application. I know that Freska Klett have created an e-classroom through their online platform. Now, for those of you, I know it's due to being a ministry project, I know for those of you who aren't currently part of that particular project, or if you would like to have access to the LMS software, our colleagues from Freska will be adding the link into the actual chat box, so you can have a look there. You can click on it there, or they'll be able to give some more information. If you contact one of your local Freska reps, they would be more than happy to provide you that information. Now, for those of you who use the IWB software, so for those of you who use Smiles 1 to 4, or 1 to 3, or Write on 1 to 3, we have the interactive whiteboard software that is actually available for all of you teachers. It's a fantastic software because it has all of the content of the printed books in physical form, in digital form, including audios and videos and interactive activities. So the great thing with the IWB software is if you're using a video conferencing platform, you can share your screen and your students are seeing exactly the same thing as you are seeing, which means it's kind of like you're in a physical classroom as it is. Of course, if you don't want to use that, your students can also use PDFs or EPUB books, or of course the iBooks, which you also get along with the Smiles and the Write On series. Again, it contains all of the things, exactly the same things as the physical book, but in digital form, including videos, audio, so they have exposure to native language at home as well. You can, of course, choose to flip your classroom, which I'm going to give you some more information later on with some of the write-on examples. You can use audios and videos, or you can use gamified content. It's completely up to you. So, delivery of the lesson. What to do before, during, and after the lesson. So, first of all, we need to use the right tools to perform the lessons. So, like I said, I found that Zoom works well for me. However, you might have tried Zoom, doesn't work for you. You can use Click Meeting like we're using now, or GoToMeeting, or Messenger meetings. There's various different platforms that you can use, or tools. Now, if you feel that you found the perfect tool for you, then you don't need to keep looking. But if you feel that the tool that you're using is okay, but could actually do with a little bit more, you can do with a bit better one, just keep looking for better ones as time goes on. Prepare and practice in advance. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this. You're all experienced teachers. just like we would do in a physical lesson, the same things we have to do now. We have to prepare and practice whether they're going to find certain activities a little bit harder, or if we have to alter certain activities to fit the online learning experience. We have to prepare to troubleshoot, just like we would do in a lesson. If you do in your physical classrooms, if you do use computers, or if you do use whiteboards or anything technological, you're always prepared to troubleshoot. You always have extra material in case that particular activity wasn't able to go through, or you weren't able to follow it through. So here we are now dealing with, if our video freezes, if the audio freezes, do I have it in different formats? Do I have the interactive material available to show them whilst I'm sorting out this PowerPoint or anything along those lines? We have to reset ours and our students' timelines. So, for example, if your students, if you had your lesson on a Thursday at 4 p.m., but now due to the new measures, maybe your lesson times have changed, or maybe the duration of the lesson, instead of 45 minutes, maybe it's an hour now, or vice versa for that matter. And of course, we have to make sure that we have compatible material to be used online, like we mentioned before, the platform, the LMS platform, the interactive whiteboard software, the iBook, etc. Now, during the lesson, it's important that we break the material into chunks. If we go through a 2-page spread with the students all in one go, because it is online, it's a very different experience for them as well. It isn't just different and weird for us as teachers. It's important the material is broken into chunks in order to help them understand it and comprehend it better. It's vital that we generate interactivity. Now, I know that some of my colleagues that I spoke to at the beginning of 2020, when the online learning and teaching began, a lot of my colleagues fell into the trap of, for 45 minutes, it would just be them talking, and that students would have, they would be muted, or their camera would be off. And actually what would happen as a result there would be that your teachers, the students would just be quiet for 4 to 5 minutes. There would be no practice of the language, no communication, no collaboration, no creativity, unless they would have to do something at home. And students found that very boring and mundane. So the fact is, just because we're doing it online doesn't mean that the lessons have to stop being student-centered, or that there shouldn't be any interactivity. So we can either divide our classroom into groups, so you can have different pair work, even if it is online, or it can be, you can create, debates, for example. That would be a fantastic way. Or you can speak to your student, just like I'm doing now, but it would be in an interactive way. Provide immediate feedback, or at least frequent feedback. Again, that's important. When you go back and forth to the activities, you ask them how it went, you give them feedback as to how it went as well. It's important that we digitalize. I'm not going to go into this again. We talked about it, using the right component, from your series, or using the right material to gamify, and of course to enjoy the new experience. I think quite often a lot of my friends who are teachers told me at first I was so petrified that I thought I was going to sing into a song then. They were so scared that they weren't actually enjoying it, and that was coming across to the students. Whereas with time, they started to enjoy this new way of teaching as well, which then came across to the students as well. So, for example, talking about providing immediate feedback to the students. Here we have an example from Write-On. Okay, so here you have a role play of the students have to practice. In the classroom, we would provide students with a model. Then we would ask students to practice the language and the structures. We would then ask for feedback. We would then ask them to practice in pairs in front of the camera in the breakout rooms, which I mentioned before. We would then monitor the activity and provide immediate feedback. So we need to practice that. Your intonation was wrong there. That was some grammatical issues, etc. We would then assign the act out as homework for the next time, and then they could video record the dialogue, and they could send it over to us. Okay, so this would be a way of asking for feedback, giving them feedback, and of course ask them to use collaborative communicative skills. Oops, just skipped a few. So here I just have what I've just added. I've just added a screenshot of when I use Zoom. This is when you would do the breakout rooms, for example. So you can tick which participants you want to take place. You can even add a timer. So as I mentioned, if you want your breakout room to last for 2 minutes, just like you would in your classroom, you will just say, guys, in pairs, do your activities. This activity number 5 from module 6, for example, you have 2 minutes. So here it's just done online. That's the only difference. Now, number 4, how important it is to digitalize the material that we use, okay? Yes, of course, don't get me wrong, the importance of a printed book will never lessen, okay? We'll never not think that a printed book is important. However, it's important that we now use digital components in order to do our lessons, in order for students to have access to the same things that we've done. So what I've got here is I've just got some screenshots. We've got the write-on, so we've got IWB, we've got your iBooks, just so you see what it looks like. Most of you have been using Smiles and write-on for about 3 years now, so I'm not telling you something new. We, of course, here we also have, I've got a screenshot of the e-classroom created by Freska. So the homepage, and here we mentioned before about gamification, and sometimes teachers tell me, but I don't want to gamify my class, I don't want to have a gamification platform. You don't need to. You can use quizzes or games that are actually used within the iBook or the IWB, and you can gamify your lesson through there, because all of the games and the quizzes that are found both in interactive whiteboard software and in the iBook are all practicing what has been taught in that particular module. So it's not something irrelevant. So here, actually, I'm going to go into the next slide. So here we just have, again, some screenshots of activities that are used both in the Freska platform, but also in the interactive whiteboard software or the iBook, just so you can have swiftly look what they look like. And here are some ideas how we can digitalize. We can have presentations, dialogues, debates in front of the camera. We can write assignments via email. We can have LMS feedback, which I know, for example, the Freska platform does allow students to have instant feedback on their activities. Okay, students can have pen pals or class. You can have a class Facebook group that is closed, of course, if depending on the age of your students and if the parents allow it, of course. You have kind of video meetings with your students, live chats. You can have video tutorials like you're doing. And of course, it's important that we are able to stay connected while we are physically disconnected from our students. Okay, now, again, I know I'm not telling you anything super wow right now, but these are questions, these are things that I've come across when I've done some teacher training sessions with various teachers around the world, and I'm just going to go through them. Like I said, I'm sure you're doing all of these. I just want to make sure that we've gone through them together. Okay, so eye contact, looking at the camera lens. Don't get me wrong, sometimes you're going to look down on your screen because the content is there, but what's important that we avoid is things like this, for example. I'm sure you've seen that from your students from time to time in your lessons as well. Check our screen presence, check that the right part of us is on the screen. Communicate with our body language. Now, quite often what I came across at the beginning of the year last year was if teachers were doing online lessons, or students for that matter, okay, they felt that they had to, sit still into the camera, and they would have a flat voice, which nobody likes that. Nobody wants to speak to a robot. I'm quite a hand gesture person, so I still use my hands, I still use my facial expressions, and I have variety in the volume of my voice, as I'm sure you do as well. Now, minimize distractions. Again, this goes a lot for our students as well. If their mother or their father is cooking in the kitchen, make sure they shut the door. For example, a few weeks ago, I had a webinar, and my lovely neighbor upstairs started to drill onto the floor. Unfortunately, there was not much I could do about that distraction other than leave my house. However, what I would do, because I live quite near a central road, is I close my window, for example, so that you can't hear the cars going underneath as well. Quite often, looks do matter. I'm sure you've seen plenty of students in their pajamas, or maybe you've seen fellow colleagues doing lessons in pajamas. Maybe just wear a shirt. I might be wearing my pajamas right now at the bottom. You don't know that, but I'm not. I'm wearing trousers. But you know what I'm trying to say, though. Of course, also, make sure our room is nice and clean. At least what you're seeing is clean. The rest of my house might be chaos, but you can't see that, and that's all that matters. Okay? And sometimes it's important that we take ourselves off the screen. Now, what I mean by that is sometimes we can use an interactive whiteboard software. Students don't have to see our beautiful face throughout the entire 45 minutes or 60-minute lessons. Sometimes it's good for them to be able to use interactive whiteboard software, which means that we'll take ourselves off the screen and they can still see us, of course, in the little icon. Now, after the lesson, give them an off-camera hook. So give them activities that they can do, maybe a project they can do. You can put them in groups and ask them to collaborate with each other after the lesson has finished. You create flip challenges, like I mentioned before, using Flipgrid, the application I mentioned before. They can connect real books to digital classroom. Involve the parents, because parents are rather concerned about online teaching. I don't know if you still have concerns spoken by various teachers, so by various parents over time still, but you know, involve the parents in the actual learning process. Maybe have meetings with them and see how they're doing, or if they want any ideas. Do individual check-ins. You know, the fact is that we've had to deal with a lot of changes as teachers, but so have our students. A lot of our students have, you know, they've been cut off from their friends. I mean, physically, they're not able to go to school, which, you know, students might not love school all the time, but they like seeing their friends at school. So, and sometimes they might not be coping well with some of the lessons. So sometimes if you have time, it's important that we do some individual check-ins if possible. So how do we engage and connect with our learners when we're not together physically? So let's have a look at some ideas. First of all, something I've come across from speaking with friends of mine is it's okay to miss normality. It's okay to miss going to school, and it's okay to miss. I don't know how things are in Serbia right now. Everything is shut in Greece apart from supermarkets and pharmacies. So it's okay to miss going for a coffee with our friends. It's okay to miss going back to a sense of normality. So the fact is, right now, guys, we are creating history. Design distance learning plans. We've adapted our teaching so rapidly. You are amazing. From one day to the other, you went from teaching in your classroom through teaching online for a long time. We are all reacted immediately. Now, the fact is, might not be teaching in a physical classroom, but we are still teaching social and emotional skills. We are still teaching flexibility in our way of thinking and our perseverance, and we're still teaching empathy and compassion, and I know you all are. Now, teacher engagement, security and confidence. We gain new knowledge and expertise. We have to expect a lot of trial and error. I'm sure you have, and I would love to hear some of your ideas where some things that went wrong, maybe some funny stories that happened to you when you first started teaching online. It's okay to take it step by step. Nobody's expecting an online teaching expert from one day to the other. And I find it's really, really important that you share experiences with other teachers, okay? Now, emphasize your presence to your students and or their parents with regular announcement, whether that be just a checkup on their activities, just to remind students of a deadline, to remind students of something that they have to do, just to check in with them to make sure that they don't forget about us. And please just take care of yourself. You know, we want you to be well. Okay, so engaging and connecting with students. So it can be through formative evaluation, evaluating the lesson or the material, evaluating your students through videos, audios, progress checks. And of course, we can keep a close eye on our students' progress through LMS platforms, for example. Now, engaging with our students, whether they be primary or secondary level. So, for example, we can use craft work that's found in the actual students' book to use it to our advantage in a way to connect. So we can ask students by using, a paper plate, make an emoji. So it's when you ask them, how are you feeling today? They can show us in the camera, it's a sad face or a happy face. They can explain to us, if they're able to, in English or in Serbian for that matter, why they feel the way that they do. Okay. We mentioned before, when we're doing online teaching, we don't have to be static with a camera just sat down. We can do stretching out with our students like this, okay? Get them moving around a little bit in their bedroom. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? Use some icebreakers to make them feel comfortable with this way of teaching. I mean, imagine how weird this must be, especially for our primary students who are very young, okay? It's important that we connect with students individually sometimes, just to check in with them, see how they are, how they're doing. Now, when we're dealing with secondary students, if we're having a technical issue, let's go for some student-led tech support. They would be more than happy to help us out, and they'll feel like they're the teacher just for a little while, okay? Let's share and let the students share. Let them share their talents, their hobbies, their interests, and so on. It's important that we create a routine, you know, our schedule, the homework, the class, and the lesson routine, of course. Now, peer engagement. It's important, like I mentioned before, that we create and we present plenty of opportunities for our students to connect with one another, to collaborate, to communicate. So here we have some examples that we can do. So we have live chats and discussions. We can have them do surveys. We can choose certain apps that we feel are appropriate, age or level appropriate to do that. We can do some storytelling, some role playing, and of course some improvisation. These are all fantastic ways of enriching our communication. Now, for example, I mentioned you can do role plays. Now, this is a fantastic idea. So much I did with my students towards the end of 2020, and it worked wonders. You can try this, but I would obviously suggest that this is more for our secondary students. But let's have a look. So here we have, what situations can you think of that would be natural for people to communicate and act out in a dialogue through screens? So here I came up with, well, no, actually a colleague of mine came up with in the newsroom. So we gave students certain topics that had come across in their students' book, and we created different groups, and they all became anchors. So they had to do their own presentation through being an anchor. And they had to record themselves, and they got to be a journalist, and they loved it. They enjoyed it. They had to do all the research. They practiced English. They were practicing particular topics that were taught in that module. So the vocabulary and the grammatical structures were practiced. It was a fantastic way of communicating, and it was great for them to collaborate with one another. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now, another great way we can have communicative activities, we can give students the idea to keep a journal, diary entries, or short videos. What was it like to live through 2020, the 2020 pandemic? Did you like it? If any students say yes, we need to call the doctor. Things that we need to write about. What are we excited or worried about? Write a letter for yourself in 10 years in the future. What part would you play? And so on and so forth. Just a few ideas. Now, I mentioned before that we can flip the classroom when it comes to online teaching nowadays. And I'm just going to give you a few examples of how we can do this. Now, the whole point of flipping the classroom is that students get to do the more individualized type of work at home on their own. And we use the classroom time in order to do the more productive activities. So let's have a look here. Oh, my apologies. My dog would like to join us in the webinar. Okay, now, all right, 1 second. Okay, so here we have an activity about a seahorse, okay? So here in this particular activity, you can see the first photo. So the first part of the activity is about talking about the seahorse. It's a very conversational style activity. So this would be done online with everybody together in the online classroom. Then the reading comprehension part of the activities will be done at home. So students will be going through this individually, and they would be answering the questions at home. And of course, you can go through the questions in the classroom. That won't be an issue at all, okay? But then to go through the actual reading and to discuss the questions. So what characteristic makes a seahorse a fish? How do seahorses reproduce, and so on and so forth? This, because this is collaborative and communicative, this will actually be done in the classroom. Then the vocabulary style activity will be done at home, since it's a visual style activity, okay? But then the last part of this particular unit will be done in classroom. So as we know, for those who use Express Publishing books, you know when you see think, it's critical thinking activity. So any activity that needs conversation, group work, pair work, or critical thinking, this will be done in the classroom together. So by trying to flip our classroom to a certain extent, we give students and ourselves the opportunity to have more collaborative, more creative activities in the classroom. Whether our students are being taught online or in a physical classroom, they're still 21st century students, which means that they still need collaboration, creativity, communication to take part, and critical thinking to take part in the lesson. So here you have all these activities are from our Write On series, okay? So here you have examples like prepare a 2-minute video about being responsible traveler. Use the ideas in the quiz as well as your own. Upload the video to the school website or show it to your class. Okay, we're not going to upload it to the school website, but we can upload it to the video lesson that happens. Presentation skills. Use your research to prepare and give a presentation about landmarks in your country to a group of exchange students visiting your school. All these are very creative activities, which of course at the same time allow our students to practice their given vocabulary. Okay, now, what are the benefits of flipping the classroom? Learners can work at their own pace. Feedback is more targeted and more use of resources or autonomous learning for that matter, and better use of online time. Now, before we go into the various components about Smiles and Write On, I'd like my colleague from Freska to show us a little video that I have for you. This video, the video from Friends. Perfect. Now, this video I'm hoping you will be able to relate to about everything that we went through as teachers in 2020. Let's have a look.
No one told you school was gonna be this way. Got 2 degrees, but these might as well throw them away. 'Cause all you learn from them won't help you here when you're not going back into your class to teach for the rest of the year. But we'll be there for you in your Google Classroom. We'll be there for you in a meeting on Zoom. We'll be there for you, 'cause we're missing you too. Work from bed again, you lost track of the days. Been spending all your time in the same PJs. The CDC warned there'd be days like these. So stay home, wash your hands, and use your elbow whenever you sneeze. And we'll be there for you, waiting for this to pass. We'll be there for you, teaching your online class. We'll be there for you, 'cause we're missing you too.
Okay, so I hope that made you smile. When I came across this video, I thought I have to add this into my Serbian webinar. I thought it was very funny. So yes, if you want the full video, you can find it online. I think it's called Friends Parody, if I'm not mistaken, Coronavirus Friends Parody or something along those lines. It's very funny, and you can relate to it. You know, you come across your students that are in the pajamas, that are looking after themselves, and we have to be there for them. Okay, so I only have a few minutes left, so I'm very quickly just going to go over some of the material components. Before I do this, I just want to say I think you're all doing a fantastic job. You were able to adapt in a very, very different situation that's going on in a very quick amount of time, and not only adapt as teachers, because let's be honest, guys, we're not only teachers, we're also human beings. So we had to deal with all this emotionally as well as actually being amazing teachers. So I would like to take a moment to just say bravo to you guys. You've actually done amazing jobs. You're still doing your jobs, which I think for me is a big part of the battle. Okay, so very quickly, here we have Smiles 1 to 4. Now, for those of you who have been using the series, you know that Smiles 1 to 3 and Write On 1 to 3 have already been approved by the Serbian MOE. Okay, so here, of course, we have what the students would get. So you got the students' books, the workbooks or the activity books, and of course, they would have the iBooks as well. Now, in 2021, we are currently in the process of Write-On 4 and, of course, Smiles 4 levels being approved by the MOE, which I'm sure they will be very, very soon, okay? So what we have here is actually we have Write-On 4. These are the components that the teachers would get. Now, most of these I know you already know. I'm not telling you something brand new. So we have, of course, the teacher's book, the teacher's workbook, you have the class CDs, you have the test CD-ROM, and of course, you have the interactive whiteboard software for Write-On. For the Smiles, you have teacher's books, you have flashcards, you have teacher's multimedia resource pack, you of course have the interactive whiteboard software, you of course have posters as well, and Freska have been kind enough and lovely enough, they've also created lesson plans and printed tests as well, which are given to you as an extra resource as well. So if you would like to have any of these, then you'd have to contact your local reps. They will be more than happy to help, I'm sure. So for those of you who maybe are thinking about using Write-On for the first time, some of the main key features of the series is it really have been created for your 21st century students. For now, talking about online teaching, it does have a lot of activities, a lot of ICT projects that we can do online with our students. It gives us plenty of opportunity. You have the interactive material that joins, that can be used as interactive whiteboard software for the teacher, or you have the iBook for the student, which means they still have exposure to both the audio, the native language in their classroom, even if we are not there with them, okay? Let's have a look. You have realistic everyday dialogue, something that students can actually relate to. It's not just all fake cartoon stuff, or it doesn't make sense to them. It's all very realistic material that they're interested in. The videos are documentary style videos that students enjoy to watch. And what you'll actually find is quite often students will watch the content, even if it's not part of the lessons, okay? You have plenty of culture spot and quill sections for students to broaden their horizons and their awareness of the world, even at such trying times. Now, Smiles, for our Smiles users, okay, we have colorful activity book, which is just as important as having a colorful students book, because that's the one that the students do at home. You have all 4 skills practice throughout the modules. Lots of opportunities for craft work and projects, which are a fantastic thing now, especially whilst we're doing our online teaching. The more opportunities students have to do craft work and projects, they can present to the class, even if it is through a camera, they can then put it onto their wall. I think it's a fantastic way of helping them practice English and stay in touch with us as well. You have, of course, the quill sections, again, in having students to feel comfortable and feeling very proud about where they come from, because these are localized editions for Serbia. You'll have plenty of references about local Serbian culture, which I think is very important. I think it's great for students to learn about Anglo-Saxon places, but I think it's a lot more important for students to feel proud about where they come from, their town, their city, their country. Okay, we have all of the dialogues are fully animated, created by the Express Publishing team. All of the animations and the audio and the dialogues are age level and topic appropriate, which means that you as teachers don't have to do extra research to go and find material for your students. You don't have to look through the internet to make sure it has the right vocabulary, if it's age appropriate, etc. And all the writing tasks or comprehension tasks are all very easy, child friendly, but just challenging enough, of course, for them to be learning. And of course, last but not least, endless amounts of songs throughout the book, which of course, yes, as teachers, some of them you will not be able to get out of your head. However, a lot of the songs also have TPR activities, so total physical response. And these type of activities is a fantastic opportunity for you as teachers to get up and use your hands and use, your body language and help students do the same so they can move around a little bit during the lesson as well. Now, for any questions that you might have as to where you can get some of the samples for the books or the components or more the technical issues, you can feel free to contact any of my colleagues in Freska. They are all wonderful, wonderful individuals, and I'm sure they'll all be more than happy to help. If you have more of a question about the actual presentation, I would also be happy to help. However, I have a question for you now, so I want you to just take a minute. We've talked a lot about what we can do now whilst we're teaching online, what we, just I hope I gave some ideas that you can possibly do with your students, or just a bit of inspiration. I'll be happy to just take one thing away from here, so I'll be very happy for that. However, I have a question for you. What will you do? What happens when we go back? Have you learned anything? Or is there something that has stayed with you from this experience that you would like to transfer back to your physical classroom? I would like you just to take a second and see what you have to say. I'm looking at the chatter box now, so if you would like to write anything, please let me know. Is there anything that you've learned through your experience in the last year, since last February or March, when you started doing online lessons, that you will be taking back to your physical lessons? Again, please make sure it's in English. I can't read Serbian, not yet anyway. So what will you be transferring back to your physical lessons? Do you have any ideas that you would like to share with us? A little sip of water in the meantime. I can see someone's writing. I just don't know what they're going to say. Let's have a look. Okay, you're thinking about doing more flipping. Fantastic. Online homework. To be honest with you, ladies and gents, I'm going to completely agree with the flipping comment, because I was actually, a few years ago, did some research and I read about flipping the classroom. It seemed very scary to me, and there was no need for me to do it. But actually, because I've been doing a lot with my students as well, I found that it works wonders. So I think I'm going to take a lot more flipping into the classroom regime as well. Completely agree. Any other ideas that you're going to be doing? So I also have online homework, absolutely, which of course you can also do through LMS platforms. Okay. Okay, well, if you don't have anything else to share with me, I think we have a few questions left. Anna, would you like to go on to the next part of the presentation? We only have a few minutes anyway left. Okay. I'll just press on the question list. Oh, thank you for sharing it. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure for me to be here with you. I always like having seminars in Serbia. I think you're wonderful teachers. Oh, I'm that inspirited. Thank you very much. That's always a nice thing to hear. I think we teachers need it just as much as our students need it. Okay. So if you don't have any questions for me, I can't see any further questions here. Let's have a look. We have no questions. That's really good. So I'm hoping that we have no questions means that I was very clear everything that I said to you. Now, I did see quite a lot of messages in Serbian. I hope that it wasn't something that you need a question from me, because, like I said, I'm not able to read Serbian at this time. However, I just want to say once again, a massive thank you from me personally for being here with me on a Wednesday morning. I'm sure you had lesson plans and things to mark and to test, etc. So again, a massive, massive thank you from me. I apologize for the mini interruption for my little doggy, Hugo, and everything. I wish you all the best in the next few months with all the changes that are coming about. Okay, now we have one last little video for you from Freska, just a little update on all of the components that are available at this time, and where you can get them from. So again, massive thank you from me. I wish you a wonderful day and take care. Bye-bye.
Novi udžbenici za 4. i 8. razred u štampanom i digitalnom obliku podjednako će doprinijeti kvalitetu nastave kako u učionici, tako i tokom učenja na daljinu.
Digitalni udžbenik, važan element udžbeničkih kompleta i nastavnog procesa koji se nalazi na e-učionici, obrazovnoj platformi sa digitalnim sadržajima. Omogućava učenicima brzo i lako snalaženje u novoj i nepoznatoj tematici. Podstiču asocijativno mišljenje i jasnije predočavaju korelaciju različitih naučnih oblasti i životnih sfera. Omogućavaju učenicima da kroz pitanja, probe i greške bolje razumeju fenomene iz nastavnog sadržaja. Pružaju brzu povratnu informaciju i podstiču učenike na samoevaluaciju.
Iz godine u godinu nastavnici širom Srbije poklanjaju poverenje udžbeničkim kompletima grupe Klett Srbija. Budite i vi jedan od njih. Naši korisnici znaju da se uvek trudimo da rastemo i razvijamo se, da odemo korak dalje. Zato smo i ove godine pripremili jedinstven nastavnički komplet i izuzetne edukativne sadržaje kako bismo vam pružili 100% podrške. Priručnik za nastavnike sa dnevnim pripremama sadrži predlog godišnjeg plana, predloge mesečnih planova rada i pažljivo osmišljene predloge priprema za izvođenje svih časova. Ponuđeni sadržaji garantuju kvalitetan čas uz izuzetno laku primjenu u praksi. Štedite svoje vreme i učinite nastavu bogatijom i kreativnijom. Testovi. Kako biste mogli da se posvetite praktičnom i kreativnom radu sa učenicima, pripremili smo testove za celu godinu. Raznoliki zadaci različitih nivoa složenosti i rešenja, sve na jednom mestu za kvalitetnu proveru znanja. Obrazovna akademija.
Webinarima prisustvujete iz udobnosti svog doma, a od autora ili urednika ćete saznati sve informacije o novim izdanjima koje vas interesuju. Posebnu pažnju posvetit ćemo temama koje vam zadaju poteškoće u svakodnevnom radu i učinit ćemo sve da vam uštedimo vreme i energiju. Bilo da govorimo o oslobađanju od stresa, temama iz oblasti pedagogije i psihologije ili online alatima i načinima realizacije nastave na daljinu, budite uvereni da ćemo vam ponuditi rešenja koja su u potpunosti primenljiva u praksi. Velika posećenost naših webinara govori dovoljno o atraktivnosti tema koje obrađuju, predavačima sa iskustvom i izuzetnim veštinama prezentovanja, te stoga nemojte propustiti priliku da saznate sve novosti iz sveta modernog obrazovanja i da čujete praktične savete kako da usvajanje znanja bude još efikasnije.
Mi znamo koliko je rad sa mladim generacijama važan i odgovoran posao, a ni malo lak. Zato se kontinuirano trudimo da budemo stabilan oslonac i podrška našim korisnicima kroz različite materijale i veliki broj aktivnosti. Ove godine naša obrazovna akademija pruža raznovrstan program, daće vam mogućnost da posetite veliki broj webinara, zato vas pozivamo da se prijavite i date sebi šansu da obogatite svoje znanje, usavršite svoje veštine i steknete bodove za stručno usavršavanje. Pozivamo vas da budete deo zajednice zadovoljnih polaznika našeg programa edukacije.